What's up, everyone, and welcome to the National Championship Preview Show version of the Joshua Perry Show. Of course, I am your host, former Buckeye captain and national champ, former NFL player and current Big Ten Network in 97.1, the fan analyst, Joshua Perry. This is typically the podcast where we talk sports, life, and everything else, but we're just doing the National Championship Preview. It's going to be an awesome show. I'll give you a little bit of what to look out for in Alabama, a little bit of what I think Ohio State should do. And then I'm going to take you back to some of the emotions, and I'm going to talk about what it was like in my experience preparing and playing in that game and what these guys are going to be fighting for. Of course, we are broadcasting on the Zedia Network. Follow at Zedia Network on Twitter for big-time podcasts and great content. And, folks, let me tell you that this last 2 weeks of content coming out of Zedia has been fantastic. We had my Sugar Bowl preview show, which if you guys listened to it, you know it was on point with the analysis. And then we had the post wrap-up show that I did, but we also had some other great content coming on the network. Specifically, the Drive the Lane podcast was awesome. I jumped on there for a hot sec, but it was really Tyvis Powell who stole the show and did a great job. So I implore everybody to listen to that. Also, Browns coming up on a huge playoff game. So if you got a little bit of time, you want to go back, I guess, when this comes out and listen and see what they had to say about it, go ahead and do that. But the content, like I said, has been on point in Zedia, doing big things out here. So kind of want to give you a little bit of a rundown of what we're going to go through. I'm going to set the scene a little bit about 2014 and what my team was feeling, what it was like preparing, and then what it was like on game day. Then I'm going to get into a little bit of what I see on tape, what Ohio State's going to have to do to combat that. And then at the end, I'm going to give you a little taste of what they're fighting for. And for the people who watch this on YouTube, you're going to be in for a little bit more of a treat. For the folks who listen to it on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, it's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to have to describe it to you, but you're still going to enjoy it. So let me pull up on 2014 for a second, take you back. So we were coming off of the biggest win under Urban Meyer in that Sugar Bowl. And what I mean by that is that was the first bowl win under Urban Meyer. It took us 3 years of him coaching the Buckeyes to get there, and we finally did it. And it was a physical battle in that game. When you remember that Alabama team, they had not only great players, but really physical players. I can remember their offensive line being great. Derrick Henry is a running back who literally looks like me. He's as big as a damn linebacker, and we had to combat that. But their defense also had some guys, and even I remember Reuben Foster as a young player playing on special teams and literally murking people. And that was what we went up against. And they were a dynasty, and Ohio State was trying to get back on track. We were building still. And not to say that Ohio State was, a little-known program, obviously one of the storied programs, but it had been a while since we had played in a national title game. It had been a while since we put ourselves in a position to compete at the highest level, and we had to go through what was currently and what still is a college football dynasty to be able to pull that off. And we did, and it was amazing. But we immediately had to shift focus to the next task at hand. We were able to celebrate that game down there in New Orleans on Bourbon Street for a night. We got on the plane, came back to Columbus, and it was immediately a shift in focus to Oregon and a completely different battle than what we saw in the semifinal. We had the big physical Alabama team, the dynasty, like I said, and Oregon was kind of, new kids on the block. They had made some noise in the CFB scene, but really, it was a team who had knocked off Florida State, which was the reigning national champ, by using speed, by using tempo. And they thought that they would be able to do the same thing to us. And so we had our paradigm shift. We prepared intently. It was eliminate 16. That was the mantra heading into the game because there were 16 seconds between offensive reps for Oregon, and that's how they wanted to win the game. And that was our only task, was to eliminate 16, and that's exactly what we did. And we were able to hoist the trophy at the end because of that. It's going to be a similar task for Ryan Day. And what I mean by that is you had a very physical battle against what is considered to be a current college football dynasty. It is the biggest win that you have had in your coaching tenure. And now you have to shift focus to a different type of battle. And it's going to be important in that shift of focus in handling the game. One thing I can remember is how calm Urban Meyer was, not only during the preparation, but the lead up to the game and in game in that national title. And part of the reason he was so calm is because he had won national titles before. It wasn't new territory for him. And I think that his calm demeanor really permeated throughout the team, and it affected us in a way that we were able to relieve some of our jitters as we were heading out to battle. And Ryan Day doesn't have that coaching experience. Nick Saban does. And that's where I want to get into this coaching matchup, because I think it's one of the best coaching matchups in college football. Nick Saban, the old dog in the game, won multiple national titles, sends a ton of guys to the league, obviously a great coach, defensive mind, but does a really good job of hiring coordinators and assistants that run fantastic offenses and prepare guys into being elite. Ryan Day, new kid on the block, really great offensive mind, does a great job of hiring assistants that can fill in the cracks and the gaps of what he lacks. For example, he brought in Greg Madison, old dog defensive coordinator, to really set the tone on the defense and to bring some coaching experience to that staff. Hired Kerry Combs, a guy who was with us on that title run, same thing, been around the block a couple of times, understands the game of college football, right? And so you kind of go through and you look at some of the attributes. Like I said with Saban, it's not just the experience of winning national titles, but it's really the college football playoff experience that he'll be able to lean on, preparing a team for a semifinal and then preparing them for a national title game, 10 days later is something that he has experience with. Ryan doesn't, but Ryan has the intangible of being doubted and playing the underdog. And he's going to have to use that to his advantage. It's really interesting how some of the intangibles can really play in. We saw that in the semifinal for Ohio State, how big of a deal it was. But you have to ask the question, is that enough of an edge in terms of the coaching battle to give it to Ohio State? And I would say no. And so for me, as I break down the coaches, except for the fact that Sark is headed off to Texas, which you got to be all in on a national title game. So I would assume that he is 100% all in, but there's still questions. There's still, how focused can you really be when you're preparing for a new job and also a national title? But take that out of the equation. I think that might be the only disadvantage for Bama. I think this coaching battle goes to Alabama. And I think the experience is something that you can't pay for. I think it's something that you can't try to replicate. It's something that you can't try to fill in. And it's the preparation that makes the difference. Is you understand how to prepare not only for, the recovery from the game, but also preparation and installation on 10 days during a game week, the preparation of your team's emotional state when you've been there before. And so I would give this coaching battle to Alabama just based off of the experience alone. But that's not to say that Ryan Day doesn't have some tricks up his sleeve, and I'm not excited to watch him and Ohio State's coaching staff coaching this game. So let me get you to a little bit of what I see when I flip on the tape. I'm going to start with Alabama's offense. The weapons are everywhere. That's just the simplest way to put it. We watched the Heisman Trophy ceremony that happened basically a week ago, and Alabama had 3 of the top 5 vote getters. They had the Heisman Trophy winner in Devontae Smith. So it just tells you the level of production and the level of talent associated with that offense. You start with Mac Jones at quarterback. And when I look at Mac, I see a quarterback who is very efficient. I see a smart quarterback. I see a quarterback who's conscious. And when you go through all those things, efficient, right? So he's going to take the pass that's there. He's not necessarily trying to force the ball down the field, trying to spark off the big play. He's going to find his guys, whether they're open deep or whether they're underneath. And he's going to distribute the ball that way, and it's efficient. He doesn't throw a lot of incompletions. He doesn't throw very many interceptions at all. He's smart. Like I said, he understands how to diagnose defenses and how to read them. And I think that allows him to make good decisions in terms of the efficiency. And then when I talk about that consciousness, again, it's the feel, right, of being in the pocket and knowing where the pressure is coming and being able to step up. It's the feel of knowing the situation of the game and making decisions based off of that. And you can see that. And they talk about Mac Jones as a 4.0 student and, a guy who's walking out with not only an undergrad, but a master's degree. And that translates directly because you can tell that there's an intelligence to him that allows him to let the instinct take over because he doesn't have to think and compute. He can just go out there and play. The one thing about Mac Jones, though, is that he is not mobile at all. He is what I like to call a stork. He's a quarterback that'll just stand back in the pocket. His escapability is not very good. Now, he knows how to climb and maneuver the pocket, but in terms of extending plays and true escapability, he's not that guy. And so that can be an advantage for Ohio State if they're able to flush him out of the pocket. Nashe Harris is a physical running back. He's an explosive running back, and he knows his role within that offense. We've seen some of the plays. I mean, the guy is not afraid to eat into some contact, put his shoulder down, run somebody over, especially when he gets into the secondary. He'll bring the fight to the players on the defense, but he's also extremely explosive. And it's not necessarily a question of his long speed. I would say that maybe he's like this might be wrong. Maybe he's an average long speed guy. I think the difference is the acceleration to get to that top end is just explosive acceleration. Like he can get away from you in a box because he can get from 0 to 60 faster than you. Maybe he doesn't have that, 60 to 120 range. Maybe it's a 60 to 100 if y'all are picking up on my analogy. But the ability to separate, just that explosion in 10 yards stands out to me. And we also saw the explosion in that hurdle he had in Alabama's semifinal game against Notre Dame. I mean, he's in stride, elevates, hurdles a guy, and then gets back on the ground and continues to run. Thought it was pretty impressive. He's a guy who really understands where he fits into the offense too. And what I mean by that is he doesn't take a ton of negative plays because he understands that Alabama's offense works best when they're on schedule. And what I mean by on schedule is if he gets the ball on first down, you want to get in that 3 to 5 yard range. So you're working with 2nd and 7 to 2nd and 5, maybe even less than that. So instead of dancing and trying to find maybe, I'm going to slip outside and I'm going to reverse field and all that, he doesn't do a ton of that. He takes the yards that are there. The other thing where I say he understands his role in the offense is he's become an integral part of their passing offense. And I think he might be third on the team, receptions or receiving yards or whatever the case is. But that's a running back who understands that he doesn't just move the ball on the ground, that he has to be an outlet and a valve for the passing game. That also goes to say that Alabama's passing game has a lot of quote unquote 5-out concepts. And they run the gamut in passing concepts. I'll get into that, but when I say 5-out, it means that the running back isn't necessarily going to stay in for protection, which gives you a hint on their timing of their routes and how they like to let those develop. I'll get to that in a little bit. Devontae Smith, Slim Reaper, as they call him. On my notes here, I just put LOL. Like it's basically it. Like you don't guard the guy. He's explosive underneath. You talk about separation. He's got the separation. He's also got the long speed. He's a guy who can get open deep, even though Alabama's not necessarily like the deep passing attack. And then the thing that I've really noticed, and I would put him for a comparison on just this one specific part of his game for Ohio State fans, I would mention Chris Alave, is the focus and the concentration to make contested catches. I think Chris Alave is one of the best in America for Ohio State. One of the best in America in terms of contested catches. When he's in traffic, when there's not a clear path of vision, when there's a defender draped on him, he's able to stab the ball out of the air, grab it, secure it with two hands, and come down with the catch. I've watched Devontae make catches where I'm sitting back on tape, and I don't know how he could have ever seen the ball because of a defender being on him in the red zone, literally draped on him in his line of sight, and he's still able to concentrate to come down with the ball and get a foot down in bounds and have it be a legitimate catch. He's supremely talented, obviously deserving of the Heisman Trophy. He is a literal problem, and I don't think he can be stopped, but I don't necessarily think that's an issue either. You got John Mechie on that offense, and I think he's a great complement to Devontae Smith. He's another explosive player, but the thing that stands out to me on tape is he's a competitive guy. Like, I watch him after almost all his catches get up and talk smack to somebody. Like, that's the type of player that he is. And I can appreciate that because you always want somebody with some edge playing on your team. And so I like watching him play. And again, I think it's a great compliment. Here's a guy who I think is actually a little bit of an X factor for Alabama's offense is Jaleel Billingsley. He is a tight end body, 6'4", 230 pounds, but he's got a wide receiver skill set. He's basically a big wide receiver, and they use him in different parts of the formation. They'll put him off the line of scrimmage, but attached to the box, if that makes sense, kind of in that wing position. And they'll use him to motion him around and insert him into the run game, whether it's on that, as I like to call it, the split zone play where the tight end comes back across and they seal off the edge on the other side, or whether it is a counter run with the guard and tight end pulling. And Bama's a big power run team. I'll kind of talk about that. Whether it is the insert kind of trap play where they insert that tight end and fold him into the middle of the line of scrimmage and have him block the linebacker. They use him like that, but he's also, like I said, in the pass game, they'll put him in different formations on bunches, for example, and just use him to really move the sticks. And a lot of times he's a guy that can come wide open because he's a matchup nightmare. And so I like him. And then I put Jalen Waddle down just for this. Have no idea if the guy is going to play. One of the best players in America when he was healthy. I don't think it matters if he plays. Ohio State had to prepare for him, and I think that puts them at a disadvantage 100%. When you have to spend time going over what the offense looks like when X, Y, and Z players are in the game, and then what the offense looks like when this player is not in the game, it takes mental space and it takes physical reps, which are limited in practice, away from the team. And so kudos to Alabama for at least dangling that out there that he could play. Although I personally don't have any expectations that he would. Wouldn't necessarily be surprised that he did, but just the fact that Ohio State had to be ready for it's a big deal. Finally, Alabama's offensive line. I got on my notes here. One of the best in the country, but I still think that they can be tested. And what I mean by that is if Ohio State is able to get Alabama off schedule and Mac Jones has to make a night out of dropping back in the pass game, I think Ohio State can get legitimate pressure on Mac Jones. And it's twofold. It's the fact that Alabama's offense probably hasn't had a ton of work in 5-7 step drop back as their main passing attack. And it's an immobile quarterback back there. So anytime the quarterback can't move and extend plays, it makes the offensive line worse. And so I just want to dangle that out there as a matchup that I see as Alabama having really good players. That's a position group where I think that they have an advantage, and specifically because Ohio State might be without some defensive linemen. But if they're off schedule, that negates some of the advantages Alabama has up front. So if I'm giving you an overall picture of Alabama and what they look like on offense, they're a quick passing team. Mac Jones, like I said, is not a drop back passing type of guy. They like to get the ball out quickly to the weapons and then let the weapons make plays down the field. They like power runs. They're a gap running team, which means that they like to use pullers. Like I said, they'll run just regular power with the guard pulling. They'll run counter, and on the counter, a lot of times they'll pull the guard and the tight end on the backside. Sometimes they'll pull the two backside players on the line of scrimmage. They like to run that insert fold play in their run game, but really everything is supposed to get guys moving up front. It's supposed to create an extra gap, and it's supposed to be physical at the point of attack. And that's what they want. Like I said, Billingsley, the tight end, wide receiver body, I've watched him put guys in the dirt when he's running the split zone or when he's running that tight end insert play because he's physical at the point of attack. And that's how Alabama wants to be offensively. Off of all of that, though, when they do take their shots down the field, they will do play action passing, which, again, predicated off of that power run game. And then they'll get into max protection, and they'll try to push the ball down the field. In their play action game and in their max pro game, they will try to use double moves. And we saw that Shaun Wade struggled against Clemson on some of the double moves. So I think that's something that they will incorporate when they try to go into their deep passing game. But really, it's all predicated off of this power run. And then it's the quick passes. And to go back to that 5-out thing that I said earlier, that's how you know that their offense is predicated on getting the ball out quickly, is as soon as that running back leaves to go on a route. And sometimes they're not even checking the running back. Like the running back will check protect, which means that he'll scan up front, make sure the pocket's clean, and then he'll leak out as the safety valve or as the check down. When Alabama's doing it, a lot of times it's called 5-out, and the running back is a part of the route concept. So they're not even looking to potentially let the route develop down the field. If there's pressure coming, the running back is getting the ball because he's a legitimate part of that route concept, and it absolutely works for him. It makes a ton of sense, and it, again, allows athletes to get the ball in space, get the ball quickly, and do what they do. And so when I'm looking at Ohio State and what they have to do defensively, I 100% believe it starts up front. And even though they're down guys potentially on their defensive line, it doesn't matter. You have to stop the run. And I've been saying it, but getting Alabama off schedule, I think, is really important to the flow of this game because you'll make them play a little bit left-handed. If they can run the ball and do it not even with explosive runs, but do it effectively to where it's still a threat that they can convert situations running it, then you put yourself at a disadvantage because you have to defend them two ways, and you already know they're going to be able to throw the ball over your head. I think the clearest, easiest path for Ohio State to have success on defense is to make Alabama one-dimensional, and they're foolish if they try to take away the pass game because nobody else has been able to do it all year long. There have been teams that have been marginally successful in making Alabama at least not efficient running the ball. And so if Ohio State can take the run away and make Alabama throw the ball, which is something that they're really good at, but at least understand what is coming at them in the pass game, that helps them. It becomes an advantage. Ohio State's linebackers are going to have to be big, not just in the run game, but in underneath pass coverage. Like I said, ball's coming out quick. A lot of times that means it's in that intermediate level or short, and that means that the linebackers are going to have to play. It's going to be rallying to the ball, making plays on wide receivers. It's going to be how quickly can you make a break on the ball and maybe close down some of the windows that Mac Jones would be throwing into in your zone coverage schemes. Maybe Ohio State decides that they want to put an extra linebacker in on the line of scrimmage. Baron Browning, we saw him line up kind of at that defensive end role. Maybe drop him out and do some drop 8 schemes just to try to take away some of those underneath windows and make the quarterback pat the ball a little bit and hold it. How do you want to do that? And then again, the ability to rally and tackle in space is going to be big. And then for Ohio State secondary, I'm going to be completely honest, not a lot of confidence in that group as a whole against Alabama because of the talent that exists. And for me, it's how can you limit explosive plays because you can't eliminate them. Nobody has. And just the way that you've played all year, you haven't done it up to that point. So how can you limit the explosive plays? And then how can you keep the ball in front of you? And what I mean by that is if you give up a 40-yarder, let's say, do you tackle it before it becomes a touchdown? do you give yourself a chance to line up and play defense again? Because I think that's big. A lot of times when you have that opportunity to line up and make them earn it and play defense again, you can stop momentum. You can create a turnover. You can make them kick a field goal instead of scoring a touchdown. All those things are going to be important. And so for Ohio State secondary, it's going to be limiting the explosive plays. But when one of those plays does happen, can you get the guy on the ground? And can you make sure that you can play defensive football for another snap? So let me flip it to the other side of the matchup here. When I flip on the tape and look at Alabama's defense, it's what I see. I see a younger defense that has some ballers and some old leadership, specifically Dylan Moses, who I think is a really good linebacker, a great player, a leader on that defense, and Pat Surtain, who is the best defensive back in college football, in my personal opinion. I also see Jordan Battle, who's a really good DB, physical guy. And then I see Will Anderson, who is a young player on that defensive line, but for some reason he just popped on the tape for me. I believe the guy's a freshman, but he's got some real ability. I mean, he's already got a college body as a young player. I think this is schematically at least, a pretty typical Saban D. They'll hit you with some man-to-man. They'll hit you with some three deep. But the thing that Saban's been good at and the thing that he coaches is they'll hit you with some NFL-type defense too, where the shell that you see before the snap looks completely different than the coverage that they play post-snap. They'll play one coverage on half of the field and play a completely different coverage on the other half of the field. And it's a change-up, but it's something that is built to confuse wide receivers on their releases, number one, and then number two, on how they finish their routes, whether they, sit down, whether they continue to move into different spaces, whether they sit short or take it over the top. Like a lot of route concepts that exist aren't, okay, so I'm calling this route in the huddle and you're going to run exactly that route. It is, okay, if you see X, Y, and Z coverage, then you're supposed to take this release. And then when you get to your break, you're supposed to do something based off of what you see anyway. Not going to get too far into it, but it's meant to confuse that. It's also meant to confuse the quarterback too. They want the quarterback to see one thing before the snap and then have to deal with something completely different post-snap. But in saying all of that, this isn't your Alabama defense that's going to suffocate you and hold you to, 14 points in a game necessarily. It's a defense that is gettable, especially with the weapons and the speed and explosion that Ohio State has to offer offensively. And one thing that Alabama has struggled with historically is mobile quarterbacks. And I don't know how much you're going to want to put Justin Fields on the move in this game, considering that he had his ribs completely obliterated in the last game. But just running Justin once, maybe twice a quarter is enough to keep Alabama off kilter and to give them some fits. So if you're Ohio State, offensively, I think the game starts with the run. When you look at what Trey Sermon's been able to do in these last couple of matchups, he has been the reason Ohio State's offense has been what it's been. It's the run the ball however you want to, and it opens up the rest of the offense for you. It's taken a lot of pressure off of Justin Fields' shoulders. I think that it's made defenses have to choose how they want to defend. And a lot of defensive coordinators will tell you, and if I was a D coordinator, I'd be the same way. They're gonna defend the run first and see if they can beat you throwing the ball, which Ohio State can do. But Trey Sermon's made people say, all right, well, we're gonna defend the run first, and we're gonna beat us throwing the ball. And even for Northwestern, there was a certain point where they probably should have flipped over to, all right, well, Justin's not throwing it well. Let's see if we can try stop Trey Sermon. They didn't, and Trey went off. And then again for Clemson, they couldn't stop anything Ohio State was doing. But Trey Sermon was a big part of the reason that Clemson couldn't sell out on Ohio State's passing game. So I think it starts there. Starts with the run. But like I said, too, QB run becomes interesting. Can you find 6 carries for Justin Fields and tell him, take what's there and get down, slide, but can you find those? Because it's going to leave Alabama in a position to where they have to think about how they're going to get the extra defender for the quarterback run game. I think that Ohio State can stretch the field on Alabama. I think Alabama's secondary is gettable, but the thing that gives you pause is Pat Surtain. And I say that because he is a player who can eliminate half of the field. When you have a lockdown corner who is confident, who has great fundamentals, who's a really good player, he can erase a wide receiver, and it puts you in a situation to where the quarterback really is only reading one side of the field at that point. Now, my philosophy as a coordinator, and something I would do if I were Alabama, would be to and take your pick, right? Because Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave are both great wide receivers, but you put your best corner on the second best wide receiver, X them out of the game, and then you bracket the best wide receiver. So you put two players, basically a corner and a safety, on the best wide receiver. And that's how you can eliminate those guys out of the game. So let's say Alabama decides to do that. What's the answer for Ohio State? We saw it against Clemson in the semifinal. It's the tight ends. It's the guys like Jamison Williams and Jackson Smith and Jigba, and it's Trey Sermon in the pass game. Justin Fields will have to distribute the football around the field the same way he did in the semifinal. And we saw the success that happens when Justin Fields is a point guard out there, when he's a distributor, when he doesn't try to do too much on his own, when he doesn't try to force it. That'll be the other thing, is Alabama smart enough to understand that they shouldn't let the wide receivers get behind them. They're smart enough to understand that they don't need to have those guys running down the field. And so if you're Justin Fields, there's nothing wrong with taking a route that'll get you 7 to 10 yards and earning your way down the field. It doesn't have to be the explosive 40-yard to Chris Olave. It doesn't have to be the explosive 30-yard to Garrett Wilson. It could be the mundane 7-yard gain, and that'll work your way down the field. But Ohio State has to have answers, and I think the answers start with utilizing all of the talent that exists on that offense. You want to spread the ball around there. And then finally, for Ohio State on the O-line, I think this is a pride game. I think this is a game where the physicality has to exist, not because of anything schematically, but because it sets the tone for the game. It sets who's got the pride, who's going to take the fight to who early on. And so I want to see Ohio State's offensive line do that. They did a great job of it against Clemson, but it's a confidence play. It's a set the tone type of play, and I want to see that early and often. They're going to have their hands full because I know Alabama is going to find creative ways to get their guys free on the defensive line. But when you're physical and you're hitting those guys, all that cute little scheme stuff goes to the side after a while, and I'm really looking forward to it. So I want to end off with this, with a what they're playing for type of, I guess, little conversation. When you get to this point in the season, there's only 2 teams left. It's rare air. And it's the thing that players go to schools like Ohio State for, is the opportunity to become national champions. You're playing for pride. You're playing for history. You're playing because you fought for it. Ohio State came into this season fighting. They didn't know if they would be able to play. They didn't know if they would have an opportunity to make the playoff. And here they are. And that's what they're fighting for. And ultimately, you're fighting for this. Hardware. You want the jewelry. You want to be remembered. This is what you're looking for. These are a couple of the relics that we got when we won the national title game at Ohio State. This first one is the CFP official issued ring. It's got the CFP emblem on the front of it. On the side of it, it says our name, National Champs 2015. On the other side, it has the score of the game, 42-20, Ohio State over Oregon. College football playoff banner across the side of it. You can see the beautiful stones in there. On the inside, name is engraved. We got another one that was issued by the school. to commemorate the playoff run, the Sugar Bowl. 42-35 score is on one side. On the other, the national championship score, the 42-20. This one's got the nice miniature footballs on it to represent the number of national titles Ohio State's won. And on the inside of this one, it says mission accomplished. That's what you're fighting for, is to accomplish a mission. It's to go down in history as a team who has achieved rare air that few teams get to. It's to go down as a team that'll be remembered. The national championship teams are the ones that get the reunion. They get to come back to the horseshoe and wear their letter jackets and be recognized by 110,000 people. They're the teams that have the stories and the shared connection, where guys who I played with are some of my best friends that I still connect with to this day. And it's because we shared in a fight to be able to crown ourselves as national champions. And so as this game commences and as we watch this battle, you have to understand what these guys are playing for. It means a lot in terms of legacy. It means a lot in terms of validation of the work that they've put in. And it's what the great ones want to do. Obviously, these guys want to become first-round draft picks in the NFL and go and make a ton of money in their future, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But the real great ones, they want to be champs. They want to win, and that's what matters to them. And that's what mattered to me, and that's what mattered to the guys on my team, and I know that's what matters to this current team that's getting ready to line up for this game. So just wanted to share that little bit because I think it's important. The ability to be a champ at anything is serious. College football is one of the few sports where you have to every day put your body through the ringer in order to get to that moment. And these guys have done it. They put their minds through it too. And I'm excited to watch it. So finally, I'll end you off with this. I think this game is going to lack defense. I really do. I love the offenses in this game. I don't know if I really like the defenses in this game, so I think it's going to be a high-scoring affair. If I had to put a score to it, I got 52-45. Ohio State will be national champions. You will see them at the end of the night lift up the trophy. They'll pass it around. They should not kiss it because we are in the middle of a global pandemic, but they should share in that moment. It should be celebrated, and I'm hoping that my Buckeyes come off with the win, and I think they've got enough offense to do it. So with that, folks, I appreciate you listening to this little preview show. Hopefully you got some insights on the matchups that I think are going to be key in the game, what either team might do against one another, and hopefully my score prediction comes true. But thanks for tuning in. Of course, my guy Andrew Zolden back there producing on a Sunday morning. Really appreciate his commitment and dedication to this thing, trying to put out some great content for you. I'm Joshua Perry, and this is the Joshua Perry Show.